In episode 1, I asked you a question. If a buyer called tomorrow, could you run a competitive process with confidence? If the answer was no, or even probably not, you weren't in strategic command. Now you've spent 12 episodes with me. The 8 value drivers, timing, the strategic window, valuation, buyer psychology, talent, structure, advisors, legacy. So let me ask you a different question, one that's closer to home. When a board member pulls you aside and asks, should we be thinking about our strategic options? What do you say? When a major shareholder asks, is it time to consider a sale? Do you have an answer that doesn't sound dismissive or alarming? When your spouse asks, what would happen if somebody made us an offer? Can you respond with clarity or does your stomach tighten? This episode isn't about preparing to sell. It's about being able to lead the most important questions about your bank's future without feeling defensive, evasive, or unprepared. I'm Kurt Knudsen. I founded and led a community bank as CEO and chairman. I've been in your seat through every phase of a bank's life cycle. That perspective is what you'll hear every episode. Here's what you need to understand. These questions are coming, whether you're ready or not. Your board has a fiduciary duty to ask. Your shareholders are thinking about liquidity, even if they don't say it out loud. Your spouse sees the pressure and eventually asks, what's the plan? And then there's the quiet question you ask yourself. Do I actually know what this is worth? If something happened tomorrow, would my family be protected? The problem isn't the questions. The problem is most CEOs don't have a framework to answer them. So they deflect. A board member asks, should we be thinking about our strategic options? And you hear yourself say, multiples aren't where they need to be right now. And the conversation ends. But here's what you're really thinking. End this conversation now. You hid behind the industry rule of thumb, and it worked for the moment. But remember episode 6? Multiples are backward-looking. They're driven by capital policy, not value. Two banks can sell for the same price with very different multiples based on nothing more than how their boards handled capital. You know that now. So you just use something you know isn't true to avoid having a conversation you don't want to have. Maybe your version is different. We're not for sale. We'll figure it out when the time comes. That's not something we need to worry about right now. Different words, same result. The conversation stops. But the question doesn't go away. And afterward, you feel it. You sounded defensive or evasive or unprepared. Not because you lack intelligence, not because you lack experience, but because no one ever gave you the language that leads without announcing a sale. Before developing this framework, I deflected too. Is this a good time to sell the bank? Because of our timing around the financial crisis, I would say there's really no market right now. That answer bought time, and I used the time to build the framework you're hearing now. Here's what makes this harder. You can't call a peer CEO and ask how they handle board conversations about selling. You can't raise it at a bankers association meeting without starting a rumor. You can't discuss it openly with your management team because the moment you do, your best people start updating their resumes. So you sit with it alone, and the silence compounds. This is why so many CEOs think they're in strategic command until they're tested. And when the test comes, the gap isn't exposed to the world, it's exposed to you. Now imagine a different version of that conversation. A board member asks, should we be thinking about our strategic options? And instead of deflecting, you say, we're focused on the 8 value drivers that create optionality for us. Whether we remain independent for 20 years or evaluate an opportunity someday. Let me walk you through where we stand. That's not defensive, that's leadership. A shareholder asks about liquidity, and you say, we've been building the foundation, financial performance, growth potential, diversification, recurring revenue, and the differentiators that create premium value. When the time is right, we'll be positioned to maximize value for everyone. Your spouse asks, "What would happen if somebody made an offer?" And you say, "We'd evaluate it from a position of strength. I know exactly what drives our value. I'm not hoping for the best. I've done the work, and that means we have options." The difference isn't circumstances, it's clarity. Understanding creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates control, and control creates value. You've just seen two versions of the same conversation. One deflects, one leads. Which one sounds like you today? If you're still deflecting, that's okay. That's where most CEOs are. But at this point, the gap isn't information anymore, it's belief. We're too small. Our board would never align. We just raise capital. Every CEO has a version. Now you have the language. The question is whether you'll use it. When we started today, I asked whether your stomach tightens when strategic questions come up. What you got was language that turns deflection into leadership with your board, your shareholders, and your family. Understanding creates clarity. Clarity creates confidence. Confidence creates control, and control creates value. The question is whether you'll lead with it. Next episode, we'll address the beliefs that keep smart CEOs stuck. Episode 14, Why Smart Bank CEOs Stay Stuck, the 3 beliefs that destroy value. If you're new to the Community Bank Value Playbook, I've created a new listener resource guide to help you get oriented. You'll find it linked in the show notes. And remember, the best decisions come from knowing all your options.